Right, guys, welcome to episode number 122 of the Ready for Anything podcast. This is Rants, Patter and Opinions with the Ready for Anything coaches. This is a special episode today. We're going to bring this on once a month right now. Longer form, we're going to be chatting for a bit and we're just going to be giving like opinions and stuff. Me and Josh don't actually know what we're going to be asking each other. We're just going to talk about it. We're going to chat about it and we're going to kind of talk about what we see as coaches working with high achievers and high performers inside Ready for Anything. So please enjoy the episode. Do you want to go first, mate? We'll just go one at a time. Do you want to do something like that? Go for it, mate.
I'll do that. I'll go first.
Go for it.
So, obviously, this has been a big year, personally and professionally, for yourself, completing the Celtman. Looking back on it, what has been your biggest lesson from that, from the training or from the event?
So, for me, we were actually just chatting about this right before. Like, for me, when it comes to doing stuff like this, like, the reason why it's so impressive, in my opinion, is because of the challenges that it brings and how much it makes you question what you are doing. And for me, like, I'm a very, very busy person. I've always got a lot of things going on. And it's one of the biggest things that I get with so many people that work with us is that, like, I don't have time. I don't have like this is my biggest limitation right now. That's the point, and that's what makes it so hard. But for me, the biggest lesson is that, like, if you want to be that person and also like embody that as a coach, but also push in business and stuff as well, it's like there has to be give for some points, and it took me a long time to be okay with that. So the biggest lesson for me is that you need to read between the lines. There's going to be certain things that you want in your life, and you're going to have to accept the sacrifice that comes with that as well. And for me, it was a sacrifice in energy. It was a sacrifice in questioning, should I be doing this right now? Could I be pushing a bit more with clients? Could I be improving fulfillment? Could I be doing this? And the answer is, like, I don't really know, but for the person I want to be, I know that these are the things that I want to do, but I need to do as well. Like, a big part of it is, like, you know, when you do a run and you're like, oh, like, I'm buzzing to get this run, but you know, a part of it's going to Strava. There's a wee part of that going on Strava, and you're like, I need to do this for Strava.
Yeah.
Like, for me, it's like, I want to do these things, but I know for the person that I want to be as well, these are the things that I need to do. So the biggest lesson for that is that if anyone's sitting questioning, is it the right time? You need to ask yourself, like, time is obviously a commodity. It's something that you need to take into consideration, but you also need to ask yourself, who is the person you want to be? And you then also need to step up and accept the circumstances that come hand in hand with doing the thing. And that's what so many folk don't get. They're like, oh, I don't have time right now, or I'm restricted by this, or I've got this and that. It's like, that's the fucking point. It's hard. It is hard. So it's like, and that's why most folk, and they're looking for this roundabout way. And don't get me wrong, I want to do things the most effective, time efficient, effective way possible, but there has to be a give. There has to be, man. So my biggest sort of lesson from doing that and the commitment and time, energy is that, like, no challenge, no change. And that's the point. If, like, you can't be risk averse to, like, everything that you do, you need to look at it and be like, well, that's why it's a challenge. You know what I mean? That's the point. If I want to get in really good shape and I've got 3 children and a full-time job, my partner works, that's the challenge. Yeah, if you weren't in that optimal, if you were in a more optimal position, would it be easier? Probably. But will it be that bit better when you do that thing, knowing that you worked that extra bit harder to get there? Aye, 100%. And people will respect you more as well, massively.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely know what you mean by that.
Yeah. What was your sort of, like, you've worked with me from nearly a year anniversary. Like, what did you kind of learn from seeing me go through that? And from that question that you asked me through the lens, how did you see it?
I think it showed me what is possible with a limited amount of time and how much effort you can actually put in, and that it almost goes back to, like, that kind of David Goggins type thing where he's like, you're only working at 40%. But when you done the Celtman prep, you were working way above that kind of perceived limit of what you thought was capable. Because obviously you're building a business, working in the business, helping me develop, helping the clients develop, as well as training for 20 odd hours per week sometimes. And it really showed to me, like, you just needed to do the work pretty much. Yeah. And it is hard work, and that is a big part of it. And it's much more than what people actually think. Yeah, massively. And a lot of people don't realise their capability. And see, the thing is, like, I said this recently, like, in my early 20s, could I have done that? Yes, I could have. Was I ready to make that kind of commitment and have that kind of discipline? No, I hadn't trained it to that level yet. And that's the thing. It's not just a case of me and Josh right now saying that, like, oh, like, you're not doing enough. Like, everyone can do more, and everyone's perceived limitation of what they can do is way more than what they believe as well.
It really, really is. But for a lot of folk, they're operating suboptimal. Something I said recently, and we spoke to the guys about it, is that if you live a suboptimal day, you live a suboptimal life. It's as simple as that. So if if you're not getting, I'm not saying you need to be waking up and doing a 3-hour morning routine and singing Kumbaya and playing guitar for 3 hours and stuff like that. But like, if you are not having consistent, effective days that are progressing you forward, whether that be like, and I'm talking about the lion's share of it. I'm not talking about every single day. I'm a human being. Like, I was very hungover on Saturday. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't have a very effective morning. Still had my Lumia though in the morning. That's a non-negotiable. But the point I'm trying to get at here is that if predominantly the lion's share of what you are doing is effective, then you're going to push the needle forward, and then you're going to go through times where you're more effective and then you're less effective. You even spoke about recently that you went through a bit of a slump, didn't you?
Yeah, definitely. After I completed the ultra in May, and I had that kind of 4-week gap before I went on holiday, and I just felt my energy was low. I didn't really have any motivation. Like, I thought about, I'm going to cut for going on holiday or get in good shape, but I was like, do you know what? I just really don't want to. More than anything else. Like, I'm just happy not having that overarching goal at the minute, because it did take up a lot of my time.
Yeah.
And there's always that inevitable come down after these events.
Yeah, you can't dodge it. Like, nobody can dodge it. And something that my old coach said to me was like, that's what we do. We do these big things. Then we go away for 6 to 12 weeks. We regroup, we get better, we develop, we go and work in the areas of weakness. And then we go back to the drawing board. Like, again, going back to David Goggins, it's like he's an anomaly that does just operates that year round, and folk read books like that, then they create this fallacy in their mind that that's how they need to operate to be successful. And it's like, no, like, for most people, I seen something recently and it was kind of talking about like what an athlete is, like an above average person. Like, we're not athletes, like everyday athletes in the sense of what we do. Like, I'm a very normal person. I'm not able to take naps through the day and recover well because I don't have a big workload and train 3 to 4 times per day. Yeah, sometimes I train quite a lot. I push towards things, but you need to take these things into consideration as well. And that's there's definitely like the psychological condition that comes with doing and pushing towards a big event is the biggest thing that folk are not ready for. And it's, me and you were actually talking about this before when we were out for breakfast. It's when a lot of people do things, like they like the idea of doing a marathon, they like the idea of doing, and I'm not just talking about doing it, I'm talking about doing it and doing it good. I'm not just talking about doing it and being like, oh man, how was your time? And it's like, I walked 90% of it, right? That's fantastic. If maybe you've came from zero, you've maybe been in a position where you've had a really bad injury, but not when you're an able-bodied 25-year-old that is able to train 6-7 times per week. Like, you shouldn't be walking 90% of that if you've actually committed to that. That's a discipline thing. And the reason why you've been unable to do that is because you lack the ability to commit to something. And that's why we have Prime, Perform and Dominate, because it's like, when someone goes through that ascension, like the reason why folk can't kind of get both and they're able to balance resistance training, they're able to balance both that and doing endurance work, like being highly, it's because they just lack discipline. It's a muscle that they've not exercised and trained them enough psychologically. And like every time, even as you said, mate, like you'll come back to that now, and obviously ran an ultra at the weekend. Not saying that you weren't trained for it the full year and everything you've done is trained towards that, but your circles just got bigger. Do you know what I mean? Like you're able to do way more. So what was your biggest lesson from that, mate? Like doing, to give us some insight, guy, obviously for anyone listening, to like your journey as a runner to what you done at the weekend.
So before I started working with Christian, I'd never really labelled myself as a runner. I was always very sporty growing up, always done sports, went to the gym, but I always avoided running. And I told myself this story, I'm not a runner, or I don't actually need to do running. But basically the truth was I wasn't very good at it and it made me feel uncomfortable, so I just avoided it. And then when we started going back and forth, he just basically called me out and said, just sign up for something and push yourself towards it, work towards that goal, which I done. And then I had this moment where I thought, I'm going to go and run a marathon. Just signed up for it, totally out the blue. And I was like, oh, this is really scary. But that fear was a big driver in me actually going and doing it as well. Because fear is it's a very, very powerful motivator, especially something as big as a marathon when you've never been a runner. So like at the start of 2022, the longest distance I'd ran was like 5 to 10k. And then by May, I'd completed a marathon. And then fast forward in a year, I've now done 2 ultra marathons in the space of 2.5 months, with the latest one being at the weekend there. And the biggest lesson I took from that was, even though it probably wasn't the most optimal prep for it, I'd conditioned myself, and it was because of all the work I'd done earlier in the year, the consistency in terms of training, running, nutrition, all that sort of stuff. Because I had and that boosted my baseline, so that by the time I came round to actually doing it, I wasn't a million miles off being perfect, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like the conditions were good in the sense that I had conditioning from earlier on in the year. I could dial it in for those 3 weeks and just make sure that I brought all that to the forefront. And it just shows you that you're not actually as far away from these big goals as you think, but it does require consistency and hard work.
It really does. Like, I heard something recently, and it was like, to be an above average, like, everyday athlete that we are kind of referring to right now, it takes a lot of hard work to get there, but then to maintain it, it's not actually an abundance of work, because you've broke this threshold. You've normalized working at a really high intense rate. Therefore, once you get to that point, like, you can operate there, but that initial part of breaking that, so see, going from newbie to getting to above average everyday athlete, let's call it, this person that's essentially ready to take on things like a decent, like, endurance distant run, or a triathlon, or they're able to swim, they're able to lift weights, they're a bit of a hybrid, they're able to do a lot. Like, getting to that point where you have that sort of readiness is very hard to get to there, but once you're there, you can become comfortably uncomfortable. And that's why, like, I was recently talking about, like, you can see this in a lot of people where they stay within the realms of the sports that they're comfortable with, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when that person's maybe not coined that, they maybe found something that they're pretty good at, they're above average at it, but then they've realised that not everyone's there in that sort of pond that they're in, and they become a big fish in that pond. Ultimately, for me, like, I'm not doing this to be like the best runner or the best. It's like more about testing the boundaries of where my capability is. Like, that's what it is to me, and that's what it is doing these different things. I don't know if you can relate to that.
Yeah, 100%. I was actually going to add into that. When I done the first ultra marathon in May, I said to myself, or I was having this conversation with my girlfriend, that it's not that running is like the thing, it's running is the vehicle for developing the mental fortitude, the mental toughness, and pushing myself. It could be swimming or cycling, but it just so happens that running is a vehicle that I've chosen to develop myself through.
Yeah, and it is the ultimate, like, I think a lot of things, like, I'm not going to sit and go down the route and play mental health therapist here, or like mental health professional, but like self-mastery and just really, really taking yourself to the realms of, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it gives you a deep level of purpose and fulfillment and belief in yourself. Like, you even sent me a voice note afterwards of, like, I felt really good, the run was good, I was really happy with my time, I said what I was going to do, but it's how confident I am in my own ability. And that does a lot for you, man. I'm not going to say it solves problems that you have, trauma, deep trauma, things that have went on in your life. It doesn't. It's not going to be the thing that does that. But it's going to be a catalyst that allows you, because for me, like, a lot of folk lack belief. They lack purpose. They lack that level of confidence in themselves. And I can relate to that, because I remember being there and almost accepting, like, the hand that I was dealt as such. I mean, like, oh, this is just the way that I am. And what that does is, when you kind of accept that sort of identity that society, let's call it, have placed on you, that you've chosen to accept subconsciously, it isn't good for your mental health. It isn't good for your confidence. And then if you can unlock that, as I said, I'm not saying it's the answer to poor mental health, but it's a big contender and essentially a deep level of fulfillment. And I spoke about this recently in a podcast, and I know that's what you were chatting about as well. It's like, it becomes this thing because you want to do these things. It's quite badass. You're like, this is fucking cool. And you do it for a bit of bravado. You do it because it's like, I'm the guy's guy if I do this stuff. I'm the shit if I do it. But then it becomes this sort of deep, fulfilling prophecy, like, just like the way that folk are so philosophical with resistance training. Now, you look at the Gymshark days when it first launched, and it was very much so all about muscle fitting t-shirts and who's got the biggest biceps, and it was very bro sciencey. Now look at these sort of top level physique athletes. They're recording podcasts, they're doing motivational talks, they're about how can I be a better person, how can I demand more from myself, and it's becoming almost this sort of race to be better. And I think because of the way that the world is now, because we are, like, the ability to communicate so much there, education so much there, like, you can learn, you can speak to people, you connect with people on, like, a different level, and you can learn to speak better. Even, like, if I was to rewind back the clock and I was sitting here recording the podcast the way that I'm speaking right now, I'd be like, who is that guy? But to me, that's what, like, self-mastery does. It's the gateway drug, isn't it?
Yeah.
It actually unlocks doors to so many other things. And we had a client recently that's just killed it, and they asked me before we actually began, how is this going to, like, because we obviously talk about the 3 pillars of a program: performance, lifestyle, career. We're not a business mentorship, but if you can essentially turn up for yourself better, you're going to become that inspiring leader in your own life, and it's going to unlock doors that you never even knew that were there, which is then in turn going to improve your confidence, your belief in yourself, what you think you're capable of, which is then going to allow you to step up in the mark as well. And you can't tell these people this at the time because you don't know what that's going to be for them. It's going to be so individual. I'm not saying we're going to give you a system to go, this is going to better leverage your business, but like the mind controls the actions. Do you know what I mean? And if your mind is in a better point, then the actions are going to be, they're going to be more effective. They're going to be more optimal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You've touched on something really important, I think, is that fitness is the gateway drug to personal development. Because I know that in my own journey, when I started getting into the fitness space, I started looking at my productivity when I was at uni. How could I be more productive at uni? How could I get better grades? And that's kind of snowballed into my job. Like, how can I be better working? How can I get better results? So it snowballs. It doesn't just exist in this fitness space. It exists throughout your full life. Massively,
man. And it's something that saying that I even said there, actually, I heard that yesterday in a call that I was in inside the mentorship that I work inside, and it was the mind controls the actions. And I actually said it yesterday in last night's call to the team inside Ready for Anything and one of our weekly calls. And like a lot of people, like I heard the line yesterday, and I actually spoke to the person afterwards. It's my friend, and I said to them, like, what was it you said there? And like, it's really hard to summarize. See, when someone doesn't really understand, they're not really self-aware and they don't really understand like mindset, because we just hear the word mindset sometimes. It's a bit like gibberish in it. It's like, I want to improve my mindset. And it's like, what does that actually mean? Your mind controls the actions. And ultimately, if you can just understand that sentence that I've just said there, is the mind controls the actions. If you can demand more for yourself, create more intention in your day, more points where you actually stop to think and be mindful, communicate to other people. Me and Josh were just saying before, we had a really good meeting about like essentially what's the client's position like before they come into the program, so that we can better understand them, so we can create better content, so we can speak to a client or niche better. And Josh was like, how many folk have conversations like this? And I was like, not many. And when you have conversations where you're actually reading between the lines, instead of just being very surface level and talking about things, you know what I mean, materialistic things, what you're up to at the weekend, the weather, like you're able to have a deeper understanding of yourself, what you value, what makes you tick. And you're able to just, I'm not saying it's the answer to all your problems, but if you don't understand yourself, you're going to be you're going to be exhausted trying to be someone else. You're not going to be yourself. So if you're clear on what you value, what makes you tick, what makes you fulfilled, what you need to do in a day, what you need to do in a week, in order to essentially fill that cup up and maintain that homeostasis, I feel like it's like you're going to live a better life. It's as simple as that, man. If you're like, right, I know that these are my success metrics in a week. As long as I make sure that I'm fulfilling them, then there's like annual ones. There's like, right, have I traveled? Have I met up with this friend that makes me feel good? Have I moved my body in this way? Have I completed this event that I love doing every single year, or something along the lines of that? That's almost like that, like creates this sort of metric. It's like, all right, that's Christian, that's Josh, that's what they do. You're maybe not saying that to someone else, but you're saying it to yourself, and and then you find that. And for me, that summarizes really well to what like fitness does. And a lot of folk, when they say mindset, it's just very like, it's very surface level in it. It's just a bit like, oh, your mindset, I need to improve my mindset.
Your mindset's just an umbrella term for everything else, like decision making, critical thinking, communicating. There's so much more to it than just mindset, and a lot of it is doing the do. Mm-hmm. Even if you think like, I know I've already mentioned David Goggins, but his mindset's improved because he does the work. My mindset towards running improved because I actually went out and ran, mm-hmm. and put myself in an uncomfortable position to push myself further and grow. It's not sitting making it all up in my head thinking, like, my mindset's improved because I've signed up for that. That's fine.
Yeah.
I actually now need to go and do the hard stuff to actually get me through that. It's like callousing your mind.
Yeah. People talk about it like it's two separate things. Like I've done the work in my mindset. Now I need to do this. Now, don't get me wrong. There's obviously things, therapy, do you know what I mean? CBT, like there's so many different things that you can do that are 100% beneficial. And I genuinely think every single person should go, I should think they should go to therapy. They should get a coach. Obviously, a lot of this stuff is private. You can get it through the government. And I know that not everyone's in a position to do that. But this sort of stuff and this self-understanding and self-mastery is like what a lot of people lack, because when they're maybe dealt with a challenge or what's going on, they don't really know. They don't really understand like why they're feeling a certain way. Like, understandably, why would you know? And that's the biggest thing, really, as you said, mate. Like it's an umbrella term, isn't it? It really, really is. It doesn't just mean that like you just work in your mindset and that's it. You do both, but like the catalyst for you going into that development stage is action. Like you think up this idea, then you take action on it through that action step. Like your mind doesn't stop just when you're doing it's not a separate thing. Like they both coincide. And obviously, naturally, the gateway drug that we're saying to this is exercise. Because if you go to the gym, like let's say, for example, use hypothetically, someone that's never been to the gym before, or maybe they have been to the gym, they've been in great shape, they've had an injury, they've had kids, it's 10 years later, and they step back into that gym feeling like a completely different person, right? And that first day, they turn up to the gym and they go back to the car and they drive home because they couldn't do it. Have a talk with their partner's like, go back and do it. Next day, they go back and they get in and they just walk in the treadmill. That is them building that belief back up. But in that time, because they positioned themselves differently, because they done that thing, they would have felt a sense of empowerment walking out, knowing that they actually went through the doors there. And as a result of feeling that empowerment, they would have seen their day through a different lens and they would have been a different person. And one thing a lot of folk don't realize is that like you're several different versions of yourself over the course of the day. Like loads, not even several. Like I don't know how many several refers to. It's a lot. Could be 100, right? You are probably like, let's say 10 different versions of yourself in the day. If your inputs in a day are the majority, the lion's share negative, you're making low quality decisions, low tier decisions, food choices, energy choices. I had this conversation with a client yesterday where I said, when it comes to being in great shape, you need to look at it like an investment game. So it's not to say that sometimes folk become very quantity focused over quality focused. So they're like, oh, that's all right. Like my coffee's got no calories in it. It's an Americano. It's like, yeah, but it's 6 o'clock. That's going to impact the quality of your sleep tonight. If you're going to have a poor quality sleep tonight, your appetite might be higher tomorrow. So your decision making might not be the best tomorrow. I'm not going to say that's the thing that breaks the bank, but you need to think about investments over the course of the day when it comes to getting effective results. And it's the same, like, I went off on a tangent and I can't remember what I was going on to, but like I get the gist of what I'm saying is like, you are so many different versions of yourself over the course of the day that like you can't possibly think that not doing stuff for yourself or not applying principles of fitness and development to your life isn't going to influence it positively. It's a big false belief that a lot of people have. They're kind of just like, I just need some training. I just need a plan. And it's like what's your thoughts like for over the course of the day? Like how much confidence, belief do you have in yourself? Like what's your self-talk like? How do you speak to yourself? How do you see yourself? And it's like, would you not rather like be a more optimal version of yourself so that most of those inputs over the course of the day were predominantly positive? Because if they are going to be predominantly positive, you're going to have a better output. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a very deep way of thinking because you can't, it's not like a bottle of water that you can just hold on to. Oh, this costs this much. This is this thing. If I buy 3 of them, it costs this much. Your mind's like, can I see it? It's just this thing that just wanders and it goes through and it's like, and that to me, I know I've went off and I'm mad. Obviously, this is the point of the podcast, but like mindset's such a deep intrinsic thing and actually looking at it in such a surface level, oversimplified way is doing yourself a massive disservice when it comes to looking at self-mastery as such.
Do you think the way that mindset is portrayed on social media has been beneficial to people, or do you think it's been a hindrance in some ways?
I think the way that mindsets, if you say to someone like, what is mindset? And one of the most responses now is like motivational content. If you have to look for an external way to influence how you feel intrinsically, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
Like, I get that these things are going to be like, the dangling carrot is important, but you can't, like, I said it recently, like watching inspiring content to motivate yourself is like having a wank to fix a crappy relationship. Like you will essentially get maybe the feeling that you're actually chasing or you're trying to essentially dress up, but it's not going to solve the problem. And you might forget about the problem every time you do it. And that's, I'm not saying don't do these things, like, but what I'm saying is they're supplementary.
Yeah.
They're not things that you should base like the elephant in the room is that like that's not what I'm talking about there isn't that doesn't define a happy relationship. It's all the other parts. It's how you communicate. It's like what you do. It's how much compassion you show each other. Like how much I'm not a fucking relationship expert, right? I'm not trying to go down that line there. But the point I'm trying to get at, it's like a lot of folk are like going like that. Or what like how do you work in your mindset? Oh, look at motivational content and you're like, what? You look at other people say stuff and make yourself feel good.
Because that will still give you the dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Of this is motivational. And for some people that will be enough just to get that dopamine hit, rather than actually going out, embracing the suck, running in the pissing rain or the snow, wind, whatever it is. Rather than developing their mindset through that, it's much easier to sit and watch a 10-second reel or TikTok with some motivational quote or speech, music over it, and go, I feel motivated now.
Yeah. I think something I was just aware of, and I don't know if it's about being a business owner, is that everyone's just trying to sell you something, right? And that is what every like, we live in a consumer-based world. You just need to look around. Everything's transactional. It's the way of the world. That's just the way it is. But if you aren't really aware of that, and you don't realize that like most, like you walk down the street, you're getting notifications on your phone about news, adverts, you're looking at billboards, you're walking past shops, you're seeing people standing outside selling stuff. Folk are talking about something that they done was a transaction. The world is transactional, right? And if you're not aware of that, you can become enslaved by that, because what are phones designed to do? They're designed to grab your attention, because if they can have more eyes on them, they can get more people invest into the softwares, the hardwares, which is then in turn going to allow them to grow their businesses. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing, but they've done it in such a leveraged, powerful way that we don't live in like a real world anymore. You just need to look about and walk down the street. Like folk are talking about AGI and the glasses being in front of your face, and yeah, that will change things. It brings people into like a different world, but like we're already there. Like the average screen time, like TV, computer, phones in the UK is 3 hours and 2 minutes. The last time I looked, we're already living in another world, right? Obviously, I know that's because of work in the world that we live in and stuff as well, but we're living in this like sort of cyber reality. So it's like, if you're not really aware of that and you're not really like setting like boundaries, or you're like, I kind of laugh at it, like things like, see where I'm like, when I know how good something is, I'm like, that's amazing, isn't it? I'm almost like a bit in awe of it. But like, whereas if you're not, you can essentially become like so consumed by that like it can take away from so many other parts. So like, it's just being aware that like, that is what every single person is doing, isn't it? They're like selling to an extent, because we live in such a consumer-based world.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Like, what, like, kind of going off topic here, but we obviously mentioned the word hybrid, and it's a big part of what we're all about. Like, what's your thoughts on like the sort of term, your opinion on the term hybrid athlete?
I really like it. I think it was something that I actually started not to identify with, but it was something that I aspired to, because I've always really enjoyed lifting weights in the gym, getting strong, building muscle. And then I also had this goal of now running, where I thought I can actually do both here and be relatively decent at them. When it comes to the term hybrid, a lot of people will do it, or weight train and some sort of endurance sport potentially, but they're not doing great in both of them. Like, the whole point of hybrid training is to be doing well at both, rather than being average at them, if that makes sense. Like, you want to be able to go into the gym and still lift strong, still lift more than you did last week, add on an extra rep, add on an extra couple of kilos. You still want to be going out running and feeling faster. You don't just want to be turning up, doing both, and then going, I'm a hybrid athlete, but I'm not actually progressing anything or putting myself out there into positions where I need to push hard on one.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of been lost in translation a little bit, because it's so easy to identify with now. Yeah,
because that's the thing. It's not, I like it, but like, I don't like when a term becomes overly used and it almost becomes a bit fashionable. I've always been into that. Like, I've always loved it. Not that I've been doing it incredibly well for a long time. I like to think that I'm doing it an okay standard now, but like, and it's what I love. Like, I love aesthetically feeling good in myself. I love it. I love, like, it's a big part of my identity, and I genuinely, like, it's not that I feel body shaming or anything like that at all, but I genuinely, it's a big part of who I am, and I feel much better about myself when I'm in better shape, when I feel full, when I feel strong, I feel capable.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's like a big, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think now it's like, it can almost be about, you don't need to be like that. Or one of the comments that we get quite a lot is like, I'm not that bothered about looking that way, or I don't really want abs. It's like, I'm not saying you need to, but why not? Why not demand more for yourself? See getting abs or getting in really good shape, it's a fucking testament to dedication and discipline. And see if you can maintain that year round, that's an amazing thing. It should, to me, I'm not just talking about someone doing a shoot prep, doing 12 weeks, putting all in, dropping 12 kilograms, 15, 16 kilograms, and then just falling to pieces afterwards because they've maybe placed it in there. And people go, I'm not slandering that or anything on top, people will go through points like that. It's all part of the journey, right? But like, to me, if I see someone like in really good nick year round, I'm like, God, man, that person like really operates in there. You can see they've got a balanced lifestyle, they're in great shape, they're strong, they're capable, they're out doing things, they're running, they're climbing up hills, I'm like, God, man, that's very inspiring to know what that person's dedicating so much to get to there. And that's the thing, a lot of people now, like the saying is, I've been doing that, I've just always liked that readiness. I never called it hybrid, I just called it like being ready. Like just being
ready for anything.
That's it, yeah. And for me, like, that's been a kind of philosophy in my life. Like, I've always wore an identity pretty well. Even when I was in the military, no one told me to be fit. I was just like, I need to be fit now. I need to do that thing, because if someone was to speak to me, I would like them to assume by my actions and the way that I carry myself and the way that I conduct myself that that's part of my identity. I don't know if that's good, bad, right or wrong, but it's worked well for me in the sense of what I'm doing. It's the same when I became a coach. It was like, I need to demand more for myself if I want to be that person. And that's kind of where we got to now. And we get a lot of people inside of the program that's been training for a while and went through a bit of a journey that me and you have went through, and they have that same sort of aspiration to do the things that we are doing. And it's like, that's, to me, it's like, you don't have to be in the top 3 every single time you do it, but you have to be doing it the best you can. Do you know what I mean? And I've done it in the past where, like, I was kidding myself on, I was saying I was doing both. One was just falling by the wayside, man, because I was uneducated, I was overtraining, I was being stubborn, I wasn't even educating myself. Like, even at the time, I wouldn't do any sort of external sort of learning. It was all completely self-taught. Like, and I mean, when I say self-taught, I mean, like, that sounds like a good idea. Educated guesses like that. And see, for a lot of the time, that's what a lot of folk are doing. They're pissing in the wind when it comes to these things. And for me, like, as I said to you there, like, the term, I like it, but I think it can get used so loosely now. It's not saying that you need to do this to achieve that, but someone's maybe done bodybuilding for, like, I don't know, they're in great shape in that, and then they sign up to Glasgow 10K hybrid, you know, like that. You ran a 60-minute 10K, like, with literally 3 months notice or something like that, and you committed to 2 runs per week when you're already conditioned to do that. It's not saying that that's not it, but it's like, is this like an ethos that you're living by? Is it just something that you're doing for 12 weeks? Do you know what I mean? That you want it to be this, like, it's like a way of training. It's a modality to me. It's like, it's an identity. You know what I mean? Rather than just like a ticky box exercise. It's like, this is what I'm all about. And it's hard. That's why it's really, really hard to do.
Yeah, I know that, like, the term hybrid's been used for weightlifting and running, things like that, and it's almost like these 2 disciplines, but to me personally, it means doing that, preparing for something like High Rocks as well. It's not just 2 separate disciplines. I think I like it being a bit of everything. It's not, obviously you want to be able to do well in them, but I don't think it should be limited to, like, it has to be these 2, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see it when I think of it. I think a strong, robust body. I think of someone that's got really good high standards, and I think of someone that's actually, we were talking about this before, it's like, what's the end goal that we want someone to get to and say ready for anything? We just want them to be fucking buzzed up about actually going and taking on challenges. We want them to walk into every session. Like, me and Josh thought about ourselves then when we were talking about it, and it's like, I genuinely walk into every weight session excited. Not like, I'm not saying like I'm like buzzing at my tits for every single one of them, right? But I'm genuinely looking forward to going in and making a progression. I'm genuinely looking forward to going in, and because it's like little microdoses of pain, isn't it? Like, if you work it out, the actual effective reps in a workout is probably about 2.5 minutes. You're really going to experience 2.5 minutes of really hard discomfort, but for that 2.5 minutes, that's where you're going to be developing yourself. That's where you're going to, the full session counts towards what you're doing, but like, that's the bit there. So for me, it's like, I'm microdosing a bit of discomfort every single day. The full thing is uncomfortable, but it's like, I get to go to that point where I develop myself, and it's like, that's to me what, like, I want to get more people there where they're just excited about going in and just being better. Like you get to be better than you were the day before in the most sort of non-cliche way possible. And I think that's for me, like, I want to help more people get to that point where it's like, they're just like, me and you were even talking about, just like, what's the next big thing? Like, where are we going to? What's the plan and why and what you're focusing on now? I'm not saying we're living a life goal to goal, but like, human beings crave discipline and progress. They crave it. I don't care what anyone says. That could be, and they might find that in other areas as well. I've got a couple of talks coming up for different companies and stuff. And one of the things I've kind of been briefed on is that a lot of people in the room are high achievers, some just professionally, some personally and professionally, right? The one thing you see amongst high achievers is they're chasing progress. And it's when you give someone that within themselves, it unlocks so many other doorways, as we were saying. So like you cannot tell me that anyone doesn't get a sense of fulfillment from progressing. Everyone does. And it's a key part of life. And I just want more people to see that. It's like, these things are hard and stuff. And obviously, as you do something like me and you were even talking about, like I said it earlier on, that you come away, like right now, I'm not that arsed about doing a big, massive endurance event right now. I just want to do something that's like, it's going to test me, it's going to challenge me, but it's going to still keep my time. It's going to keep my energy in place. It's not going to absolutely tank me. It's not going to stretch me. It's not going to take me away from my business. It's going to allow me to be the person that I am. Do you know what I mean? And do that. So, mate, what I'm really interested to hear, because I'm blabbing on here, I know I love talking, is when you came into the program. So to give you some insight, guys, Josh was a client of mine's. Then last August, you then obviously behind the scenes took the leap, and I then obviously took you from client and hired you as head of client success. It's nearly been a year right now. And obviously it's been a big year of growth, and it's been amazing to witness Josh's progress as well. Like even just with the guys that coming in from client, it's been a transition, man. I didn't know what I was doing. I've never hired someone. I've never took someone. It's been amazing. And for me, the biggest eye opener was I was more becoming a mentor, not just someone that was delegating work and that. But what was the biggest surprise to you going from client to coach? What was the biggest thing that surprised you?
All the work that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You think it's just messaging, sending messages, doing a check-in, or that's what you think that the coach is doing, but the coach is doing way more than that. They're programming, outreaching, building systems to make sure that the client has got all the resources they need to succeed. You don't see all this stuff going on in the back end. You just see the WhatsApp message you get in your check-in, in your true coach, in your weekly call. Not just that, but you see that. What you don't see is everything that goes on.
Yeah, it's mental, and that's what, like, a lot of people, again, it's like it's very dismissive when a lot of people talk about like coaches in a very surface level way. And the biggest thing that, it's not that it even irritates me. I just know that it's a thing, and it's my job to change people's perception of what it is. It's people's perception of what being a coach is. And people are kind of always like, what'd you get? Like, what do you do in there? Like, what happens there? And you're like, you change. You get to become a better person. And a really good example that I gave yesterday, I heard it last week from a copywriter, Chris, a really good guy, came in and spoke in the mentorship that I'm inside. And he was talking about an email that I can't remember if he sent it or someone else sent it, but it's bamboo. And he was using the example of bamboo. Bamboo is a fucking badass plant. If you call it as a plant, is that what it is? But it grows rapid, it's strong, it produces them like 30% more energy than the rest of the hardwood forest. It consumes energy from other bamboo and other plants surrounding it. And for me, the best way to describe is what we do is you're like a bamboo shoot, and we just plug you in amongst loads of other bamboo. And what happens is that you grow faster than so many other folk. It's not to say that there's other bamboo shoots growing, but like we put you in amongst the biggest, the fastest, and the hardest growing bamboo that then makes, essentially just like enhances the fucking life out of everything else that you are doing. And that's to me what coaching is. Like all the things, like the formalities, the check-in, the touch points, the calls, they're just formalities. And when you speak about it on the surface, it is very surface level. And it's like, oh, so you get a call. It's like, but think about like, even, so if someone's maybe listening to this podcast right now and you're thinking like, I'm still on the fence about coaching, what have you taken away from this podcast? Like, what have you taken? There's probably been loads of millions wee light bulb moments, wee things. You might not, right? But the point I'm trying to get at, there probably has been a lot of things that you've taken away from this. Now imagine that on steroids. Imagine that every single day. Imagine that with having a plan, having vision, constantly having a magnifying glass on you, being amongst other people that are going through the same thing, that understand what you're going through, because most of the folk in your life don't. The people that you surround yourself with don't. That's what being coached is about. It's about submerging yourself in a process. Think about like your work. Think about like when you went through an opportunity in your work, in a process in your work where you went from not being that skilled to highly skilled and knowing things that you can't even describe to other people. You can't even put into words what you know, because you know it, because you've done it for 3 to 5 years. You've done it thousands of hours doing it. You've developed yourself so much. That's what being coached is. And some folk look at it like, so what'd you get? Like, what do you mean, what'd you get? It's like, who do you become? Like, who do you become in the process of putting yourself and positioning yourself here? And it's just a very, to me, a very silly and stupid way to look at it.
Yeah, there's a perception that coaching is just training plan, nutrition plan, that's it. But it's not, because it is a person-driven process. It's not just about, right, this is the process, follow that. It's like, who, as you said, who do you become in the process of doing all this?
Yeah.
Do your values change? Do you become a better person? Does your relationship improve? Does your work life improve as well? It's all these things. It's not just, right, going to the gym, I can now deadlift 10 kilos more than when I started. It's way more than that.
Let's imagine you hit the same point every single time. It might be after a weekend on the bevy. It might be after a holiday. And you hit that Monday and you've done really well for a few weeks and you lose all your momentum. You miss the first few gym sessions, right? And you go through that same negative self-talk. You go through that same sabotage cycle and you see yourself through a certain light, and it's the same thing that tarnishes your belief every single time. Now, let's imagine you bypass that. Let's imagine all those stories you tell yourself become different. Let's imagine that the lens that you see things through completely changes as a result of putting yourself in a position like being coached, right? You cannot tell me that that's not going to change your life. You cannot tell me that your future and the line in the sand that you're drawing right now, the same one that you keep drawing, is not going to change. It's obviously going to fucking change. And if you can't see that, in my opinion, you're looking at it wrong. You're looking at it completely wrong. And that's what coaching is in a nutshell. It's helping someone change the course of the same cycle they keep going through. What's the saying? It's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. It doesn't work. You need to get a different opinion. You need to get a different set of eyes on it. You need to get someone to call you out when you keep doing the same shit that keeps putting you into that sabotage cycle. And I'm not just saying it's a sabotage cycle, but mate, from you seeing it from the outside, it's the same things that trip folk up. Nobody's reinventing the wheel here and doing different stuff. Folk think they're different, maybe because they've ticked off a few things or they're in half decent shape. The reason why you're not going beyond that point you keep hitting is because of you. You're the common denominator. The person that keeps stopping is the common denominator, not the external reason. There will be somewhat external reasons, but it's always you. It's always a you problem. Aye, rant.
Right, I'm going to give you we said this is going to be called Rants, so I'm going to ask you a silly question.
Go for it.
Would you rather have hands for feet or feet for hands?
I don't know. I've pure got mind. I want to ask you mad things now. Would I rather have hands for feet or feet for hands? What? So that if I've got hands for feet, that means that I've got hands in my hands, and so I've got
hands here. You've got feet here instead.
But then I would still have feet on my feet.
No, you have to.
So yeah, that'd be the same thing if it was hands for hands or feet. So you would either have 4 hands or 4 feet.
Yeah, pretty much. Go with that.
4 hands.
Why?
I would be more functional. I'd be able to carry out more things, more tasks in my day.
I would agree with that, probably.
I feel like you would just become useless if you had 4 feet.
Yeah, like, no opposable thumbs or anything like that.
I feel like, what would you be able to do? You'd be like a dog.
Pretty much. Though, if you
just call me Sky.
Even though if you have 4 hands, you still have to walk on your hands. Let's say that. How does that work?
You still what? So you can't.
If you get 4 hands, you're still going to have to walk on your hands at some point.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. You just have pure calloused hands, wouldn't you? Stinky hands. Dirty, stinky hands. I would still go with the hands, mate. I just feel like you would just lose so much ability with the I don't know, man. You would end up with like you just becoming so highly effective with your toes, wouldn't you? In your hands. See if you had feet for hands, your toes would just become so highly, just very, very snubbed, like highly effective fingers.
So I always imagine that if you had 4 hands, you would struggle not to run, but if you had 4 feet, you could run so much faster.
Yeah.
You'd be like an actual animal.
Yeah.
running with 4 feet.
Ultimate hybrids.
Yeah. And you can pretty much still lift weights with 4 feet. You just don't need to hold the weights. You can still do.
You could do one of those, the presses you see in gyms that are just, they make no sense. The leg presses that are like upside down.
Lying down, yeah.
You can sit under it and press it because your feet would be on your hands.
Just press with 4 feet.
Right. See, when I program for Josh, he's like, obviously I still coach Josh through whatever he's doing, and like I see this like little version of Josh, and I call it little Dragon Ball Z Josh, because like when you give him a new program, he's like, I can imagine him going all red and just not saying anything and just sitting facing a corner going, yes.
That's not far from the truth.
Because he'll message me saying, I'm shaking right now. Like, you'll be like, that brings me on to a really good point, by the way, because it was something I actually thought about earlier. But yeah, we'll shelf Dragon Ball Z Josh, because I remember this and I forgot it. I've got a brain like a sieve, by the way. I think that's years of partying. And I always forget things mid-conversation because my brain just goes off in so many mad tangents as well. But something that I mentioned in a training that I delivered recently, and it's a really, really good point, and it's essentially hitting like a success ceiling. So like, when you do something, whether it's like a big challenge or you're working towards something, like we use Josh, for example, when he worked towards the marathon, right? So Josh, to give you a picture when he came in, was someone that he was well trained. He understood, like, he had really, really good standards in place. He always religiously trained. He just never really ran. And he was someone that had really good discipline ingrained. So when it came to us giving Josh a program, it was kind of like, cool, I'm just going to action that. But during this program for the marathon, on like, I think it was like 5 runs, you PB'd your distance, 4 or 5 runs in a row.
Yeah, because it went from half marathon, and I think I was on holiday for a week, and then I came back and it was like 30k or 25k, 30k, 35k.
Yeah,
I'm like, every week this is a PB. Like, I've never ran this far.
Yeah. So the biggest thing with this is that, like, for a lot of people, and what I've certainly experienced as well, like, especially when you do get people into like a crazy good physical condition, or you get them to do something, is that when you sign up to an event, a challenge, or you put yourself towards something so big, this could be professionally as well, like you're chasing a big sort of amount of zeros in the bank, an amount of sales, like a big project you're trying to do, you're trying to close, whatever it is, right? Typically when you set the bar so high, which is great, you will PB on the way to getting there, which is normal, right? If you set a PB that's like I spoke to one of our clients yesterday, and the pull-ups are massively coming on. I said, what's the goal by the end of the year? And they said 15 for pull-ups. And right now they're at 5. And I was like, so they're going to triple it, right? So even when they hit 10, even when they hit 12, even they hit 13, they've PB'd. But what this can do is it can create this sort of point where you kind of go, I've never been here. I've never been here before, and it's nice here. It's comfy here, and I'm happy here. And what it can actually create along the way is that you hit this success ceiling where you're like, this is cool. This is unknown territory, because you're 2 or 3 times above where you've ever been before, which is fine. But if you're not aware of that, you can create like an element of complacency within that, because to get to that point, it's hard. But then what can happen on the flip side of that as well is you can go through these like weeks of graft to get to this point. And even hitting that landmark point along the way, like we used for Josh, for example, hitting that first ever 25k run, 30k run, psychologically, you need to remind yourself that the game isn't over, that you're still in it. And this is something that I remember I learned from Ross Edgley when he was swimming around the UK, and he hit a point where he hit the longest ever recorded swim during his world record attempt to swim around the UK. So he broke the world record on his attempt around the UK, and everyone had champagne, everyone was celebrating, and he went downstairs and tucked himself away. He went, because I can't celebrate right now because I'm not finished yet. And I see this all the time with so many folk that are high achievers, high performers, where they're pushing towards something, is that they hit a success ceiling along the way because they celebrate too early. Rightly so, you should celebrate your wins. But when you create that sort of fallacy along the way that it's like, oh my God, like I'm so fucking good right now, like I'm buzzing about myself, like you have to have that confidence. But if you're working towards something and you're still not finished, it's unfinished business, and you need to make sure that you're still in that mindset. And that's something that you were talking about earlier on, but I didn't want to butt in, but I forgot what I was talking about earlier on. But it's something that I see. So if you're going through a point right now where you're gunning towards something big, and you maybe slow down a little bit, and you've hit the famous words that I hate, the plateau. You've not hit a plateau. There's no such thing as a plateau. You've just hit a lack of momentum. You need to look at what you're doing. You need to see that, because again, looking at it very surface level, I'm doing my sessions, I'm doing that thing, I'm tracking this. It's like, but how are you doing them?
Yeah, I was going to add to that point there that you're talking about, like the plateau and getting the wins. It's almost like your brain loves that novelty. So when you're at that so-called plateau and you're doing everything but nothing's really changing, one of the things I like to do is like incorporate some sort of novelty to it. So whether that's like training somewhere else, training with someone, running a different route. I know that I had a conversation with a client and they said, I'm just not feeling it when I'm running. Like I don't feel motivated to go and run. And I asked them, whereabouts do you go run? And they said, I go the same route because I know it's this distance. And I went, go run somewhere else. Run somewhere else and see how that makes you feel. And they went and done it. They went, I feel so much better now.
Yeah.
Just from changing the route. And I know that I've done that in the past. Like try and go to different places, go different runs. And I was actually speaking at a running club last night. And one of the other guest speakers there was saying what he does is he goes on to Strava, looks where on the map, finds like a green space that he hasn't ran in, gets the train there, and then like runs back.
That's a really good way to do it. It creates excitement because it's like a really good point in which you made there, mate, was like it's the feeling thing. And I made this point last night talking to our clients is that we're just chasing a feeling. See, in life, we're chasing feelings, man. So it's like, what's it like to run that marathon? What's it like to actually feel really strong? What's it like to lift that kind of weight? What's it like to get a medal? What's it like? And you're doing the thing, but ultimately what you are chasing is purely a feeling. It's like, oh, I want to have a family. Why? Because I want to see what it feels like to have kids. I want to hire someone. Why? Because I want to see what it feels like to help someone else develop in their career when I've developed in my career. It's a feeling. There's obviously merit towards it. And again, you could even argue, why do you want to do that? Oh, I have more money in the bank. Why do you want to have more money in the bank? So I can go on more holidays and have more experiences and feel that feeling of what it's like to be in Jamaica, what it's like to be in this other country. But the point that you said there was really, really good, is that sometimes that feeling that we place on ourselves can be the biggest thing that slows us down, because we think that we should feel a certain way when we are somewhere. And I had a really good conversation with a client the other day that came back from a holiday, that had an amazing time, that felt incredible going away. And they were like, right, I'm ready to go to war when they got back. And it got to the end of the week and I was like, you'll be buzzing right now being back. And they weren't, but they never told me that. And it wasn't till Friday where they were like, Christian, like, I'm not feeling the way that you said I'd be feeling. And they were really, really worried about it. I went, that's a pre-imposed feeling that you've took from me and you've put on yourself. And the big mistake that so many folk make, and it's again why it's so important to have coaching, to have people around you, is because most of the pain that's created in your life is created by your own mind that you place on yourself. And it's typically because you're like, I shouldn't feel like this right now. Should I feel like this right now? Oh, I feel bad, or I'm guilty, or like this is happening and this bad thing's happened in my life, but like I'm feeling good right now. I shouldn't feel this way. What happens is you become fucking a war in your own mind. And it's like, it's the biggest thing that slows so many folk down. And I'm not saying that we are there to just talk about folks' feelings, but see, a lot of the time with like, obviously we're given a process, we're given things to do, but it's reassurance that what you're doing is like, is normal. And for me, like I've had a lot of coaching and mentoring over the years, and for where I was at when I started seeking it out, and I'm not saying that I was above it, I'm not saying, but a lot of it was actually just witnessing a process and seeing how someone else done it, or how someone else spoke about it, or how someone else perceived it. And they didn't even need to tell me anything. I just had to see firsthand how the person that was in the position that I wanted to be in dealt with the situation that I'd never dealt with before. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's like, you go, what, like you said about the thing about the Celtman and stuff, you were talking about, fuck, like I seen that what you can actually do, and like actions speak more than words. And for a lot of people, like what they lack is reassurance of what they're actually doing. See when clients come into the program, what's the first 30 days in the program, we really see it's an important time because you're laying really good foundations, and we're just giving clients a lot of reassurance in that time. We're kind of teaching. We are coaching. Coaching is the part where you start kind of shifting beliefs, where you start asking really good quality questions, where you're maybe kind of calming someone down or pulling them up out of a hole that you get stuck in. That's the coaching part. But at the beginning, it is very much like do this, do that, do this, do that. And they need to kind of observe how a process is actually articulated and done, because they're just not aware of it. And for me, like the reason why I don't know if it's a guy thing and it's an all or nothing mindset thing, but the reason why I avoid doing things, or I have done in the past, because now when I want to do something, I just hire someone to help me do it, or I ask someone, or I pay someone, because I've learned that if I don't do that, I end up just sitting overthinking it and going, is that the right thing? If I do that, will that just waste time doing that? If I don't do that, like So rather than do that, I just try and bypass it, and then I look at someone else that's more advanced in that area, and I go, here, can you tell me what you do there, or what you've done in the past, or what's worked for you and what hasn't worked for you? And it's almost like a cheat code.
Yeah.
Like a life cheat code, and you're able to bypass the mistakes that they made.
It's like asking for help. It's the easiest thing. Like, I always say this, you always hear people saying that's a stupid question, but I actually don't believe there's like, and there's no such thing as a stupid question, because what seems obvious to other people isn't always obvious to you. So especially when it comes to coaching, like when you've been, for the likes of us who've been training for a long time, we've got someone in who's relatively new. They're not going to know all the stuff we've done. They're not going to know how to manage your nutrition around a marathon or Celtman. They need to ask for that. Like, so what seems like common knowledge to us isn't going to be common knowledge to someone who's just starting out or someone who's working towards their first event.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed having you in because it's grounded me, because I've been doing this for a while and I want to go to the moon, and I like talking about like, we're going to do this and like ascension and mindset. I sometimes forget like really basic stuff, and we were joking recently about just giving folk really basic information. It's like, oh wait there, Mark doesn't know how to actually just what a day of calories should look like. Mm-hmm. Like we're just I forget that stuff sometimes, and it's not to say that it's like I don't know it, but it's like there's a lot of assumed stuff there. So it's been really good having you in, because it's like sometimes I'm like, I need to, like, you'll be talking about a conversation we had with a client. I was like, that's an amazing point. Like, I was really simple and I just overlooked that, because I'm always sometimes looking for the bigger thing, but it's always comes back to the basics. Always.
Yeah. Always. I think that comes down to probably what I believe is the biggest skill that people lack today, and it's empathy. Because a lot of the time, especially now, it's just easy to go do this, do that, or not to meet people where they're at. You've got to meet people where they're at, and have that communication with them, and that's just empathy. Put yourself in their shoes, what they're going through, rather than just having this expectation of them. Yeah.
What one piece of advice would you give to someone that wasn't good at communicating, that they did kind of bury themselves away, that they did kind of isolate themselves a bit? What advice would you give to them?
Start off by saying there's no such thing as a stupid question, because someone who isn't good at communicating will think these things in their head, and they'll go, I don't know whether to ask that or not. That make me sound silly. I don't want to look silly in front of them. This is going to make me look like an idiot. So they won't ask it. I would say that just ask, because there's a good chance that either myself or you have been through it, and we'll know the answer.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I see when people go through points is that even in our onboarding process, when someone comes on board, I make it very clear and talk about these things, but quite often the stuff that people need to know is just about crossing that bridge when they get there. And that's the part that folk, because they want this like framework way, exact science, and it's kind of like, we'll get clients for the like, I've got a stag do in 3 weeks, what do I do about that? And see the fact that they're worried about it, I'm like, brilliant.
It shows the care.
It shows they care. See if I'm looking at someone else's life and I see it through Instagram and not in our chat talking, I'm like, oh man, I'm like, it's like the way that they're looking at it is like, they're not looking at it properly. They're not there to just be given a program or a plan to follow. They're there to rewrite the way that they do things. And there's no framework to that. And that's something I give to a lot of our clients when they come in now, is like, I just need you to be vocal when you're doing things that you perceive as what you struggle with. So when you're eating out, you're ordering a takeaway, you've got a wedding coming up, you've got a holiday coming up, you just need to talk to us about what you're stressed about. And what you typically find is that the answers are at the bottom of that stressor. So immediately when you vocalize like, oh, I'm terrified about this. Terrified about what? Well, this. Then we go, yeah, this is the way I would do it, and this is why, and this is why you think this, and this won't actually happen. Calm. Now imagine over the year, 100 different interjections like that over the course of a year. That's going to change the way that you think. It's going to reprogram and rewire the way that you do things. Now imagine it the other way. You just communicate when it's the training part. You just communicate when things are all singing, all dancing. You're going to be good until the thing happens that makes you flop. you need to, it's not even asking the question. You just need to be like, what do I do? Like, it's not even a question. It's just like, I'm stressed about this. And then someone goes, stressed about what? What about this? Why don't you try this? Why don't you do that? And they go, oh, it's the biggest thing that folk don't realise is when they come to something that they keep running up against, it's not just a case of following a process. It's about actually vocalising what it is that they perceive as the problem. And that's the biggest thing. And I say this all the time. The problem isn't the problem. The problem is the way that you react to the problem.
Yeah, your thinking patterns around it as well.
Your thinking pattern around the problem. So it's like, oh, my issues are weekends. No, your issues is the same process you go through when it comes to the weekend and the decision pattern you make as a result of the weekend. It's not the weekend is your problem. And it's like, oh, right, that makes sense. So like, say that and say it again in your mind. The problem isn't the problem. The problem is the way you react to the problem. And if you can rewrite that, and if you can gain more confidence and awareness around it, you're going to become a better person and a higher operator as a result of that. So what would you say, if I can get this open, what would you say is the hardest challenge in the world and why?
Oh, that's a very good question. The hardest challenge in the world?
Yeah. I've not even said physical.
I actually think raising a family,
I was about to say that.
is the hardest thing in the world, because you're no longer responsible for just yourself. You're now responsible for other people. And yeah, you might be like a manager in your work, but being responsible for someone young, you need to feed them. You need to be there 24/7. Like if you have a young child or a baby, you need to be there to watch them constantly. So I think that's the hardest thing in the world.
That's exactly what I would answer to that, mate. That's exactly, you took the words out of my mouth. And the I think the amazing thing about that is we're not parents, and we're not sitting here saying that we know it all. Like, I want to have kids, not right now. I don't think anyone ever really plans. Well, there's folk obviously they do that are trying to have kids and stuff. There's plenty of people that I know. But like, to me, it's like, see when folk are like, see we're sitting talking about self-mastery today, personal development, improving yourself, right? The most selfless thing that you can do. I remember that my therapist said this to me when I went to therapy a while ago. He said, I was like, why? He was like, why are you going to therapy, Christian? I was like, I just want to learn a bit more about myself. And he was like, obviously I'm not saying at the time I was all like sunshine and rainbows, I was fine, but everyone's going through challenges. But at the time I was in a pretty good headspace and I just wanted to learn more about myself. And he said, that's the most selfless thing you could ever do for your unborn kids, Christian. And I was like, that's a nice compliment. And it really got me thinking about, like, and as we're talking about there, that challenge, what's the hardest challenge? And to me, it's like, I probably overanalyze a lot of different things. And for me, it's always like, I suppose that's the thing about having kids, isn't it? Or like, or raising someone or bringing someone into the world, is that like, it's not about being perfect at it, but I think it's about being the best you can be. Because if you're the best that you can be, then that person's going to learn through your actions. I was talking to a client recently that was also a coach, like mindset coach, lifestyle coach, whatever you want to call it. And they were basically saying, like, they were speaking to someone and they were chatting about like their kids, and they were like, maybe you just need to be a mum and not a coach. And I thought that was an amazing frame, that what they were talking about. And I was like, not saying that there was anything wrong with what they're doing. I was like, because that's the thing, sometimes when you become so into like self-mastery and like personal development, you're like, I'm going to make this prodigy. Like, I'm going to make this thing. And it's like, you just do need to get a lot of things wrong, don't you? It's just like any journey. But I would totally agree, mate. Like, I think bringing someone else into the world is a very hard challenge. But to me, I think it's an amazing reason to improve yourself. Because if you're better, the best way that you can improve someone else is by being better and choosing a bit of hardship. Do you know what I mean?
One of the things that I really love about my mum and dad is hearing them talk about like the holidays they went on before me and my brother were born, and everything that they'd done, holidays, honeymoons, things like that, nights out, all that sort of stuff. And then like looking at the pictures, one thing that I find amazing now is that we binged on their photo albums. Like, remember like the photo albums, like all the pictures that from the wee disposable cameras, we binged on that. Our kids are going to be able to binge on like this my blog, everything I've wrote over the past 2.5 years, our Instagram, Facebook. They're going to be able to see so much because we've captured so many moments. And I think that they're also going to be able to see the journey that you've taken as a person. And obviously it's going to take them a while to fully understand it. They're not just going to like be 5 years old and go, right, I'm ready to go and do my first Ironman. Like, they're going to, like, when they get older, read all that stuff and go, wow, my parents are pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
They've done a lot, and hopefully they'll feel inspired.
I know. Like, and see, for me, I remember someone said a while ago, I think it was Gary Vee, and he's like, everyone should make content. I just never got it. I was like, what do you mean everyone should make content? See, after years of doing it now, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it has to be highly polarizing, edited podcasts and reels. But see, just like kind of like learning to like communicate to other people in a way that's like just kind of logging what you're doing. Like when we were doing the Celtman, like a lot of, you know, it's like, again, people's perception. It's like, I wasn't the fastest person doing it. I wasn't an elite athlete doing it. I was just doing it. Like, I'm not a triathlete, right? But we've vlogged it. And a lot of folk were going like that. Why you get the camera? Like, what are you doing? And I just went like that, memories.
Yeah.
That's what I just started saying. I was like, memories, because it was like, because that's what it is. It's like, to me, it's like, that's the ultimate photo album.
Yeah, definitely. Ali Abdal also says that about creating content. He said everyone should have a newsletter.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to do that. Substack's free. You can just go on and create a newsletter, and that's you.
Well, what's the difference? Like, folk have always kept diaries and journals and stuff. It's just a digital,
thing,
it's just a digital journal and diary. And I think it's pretty amazing. And yeah, a large part of it might be promoting a business, whatever, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's about you and your journey and who you are. And if you scroll back, I put a post up the other day about, I hit my 2000th post on Instagram, and I worked out it was like 80 days. And if I put the first post and all that, and I look at even the way that I wrote, even the way that I posted, even the stuff that I posted, the stuff that I was talking about, that's a fucking story in itself about the person that I became in the process. So that, like, yeah, pictures and stuff like that as well are fantastic, but at the same time, like just telling your story, it doesn't have to fucking write it to yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got a newsletter, and how many folk are on it?
Like 30.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I read it every week. Do you know what I mean? It's 1, 2, 3 Sundays.
Yep.
And guys, get on it if you want the link for it. Head into, is it in your bio?
Yes, it should be in my bio.
Cool.
Make sure it is.
Panny. Like, that's what
Is it? I don't know.
We'll get it on there, yeah, we'll get it on there. But I head to josh.readyforanything or Josh O'Neill. Josh.O'Neill.
Josh_O'Neill.
Josh_O'Neill, and you'll be able to get his blog in there as well.
Josh_O'Neill1.
Yeah.
Just to make sure.
Yeah, let's get up to 100 people. But yeah, like, I think it's an amazing thing. It's not saying, I just think it's nice. Like, I think like someone could fucking clone me because of all the videos, all the content, all the, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but someone could pinch my identity. AI, like ChatGPT, folk will just be putting in my podcast, my YouTube, my Instagram, and going like that, write me a story written by Christian. Write a incriminating letter written by Christian. I'm not giving anyone ideas. This will genuinely be able, people will be able to do this. But yeah, like honestly, like, I heard that a long time ago and I never understood it. Now I get it. I really, really do. Because it's just essentially a digital diary, isn't it? That's what it is. It's like, maybe it's about something, but I think it's an incredibly, if anyone's inspired to do it or that, or whatever, it doesn't have to be start a fitness account, progress, like, track your journey. Your future self will really like to look back and see that. I can speak from absolute experience. It's an amazing thing to have. It definitely is. But yeah, is there anything else at all, big man? Anything else that you've got to cover? Or
let me check my questions.
I've just completely, just totally went freeballed it. Like,
I've got a question for you here.
Go for it.
Who is inspiring you at the minute?
Who's inspiring me?
Celtman. Who's inspiring you?
Who's inspiring me at the minute? A couple of folk. I think now, like, the thing that we were talking about this before, what's the next big challenge? And I've done a lot of big challenges now, but I want to do one next year that's like over a matter of days and weeks. Something that's like you do it every day, and it's just that you have to get up every single day and do it. And for me right now, like, there's a few folk doing, I can't even remember the guy's name. There's a guy right now that's on, at the day of recording this, he's on day 100 of completing an Ironman every day for 100 days.
Wow.
He's literally, so today is actually the day at the recording of this that he's met the record of the Iron Cowboy, who's the guy that's already holding the record, who done it for 100 days. Now, I remember watching the Iron Cowboy's first ever documentary about when he done it 50 times. So he done it 50 times in 50 days in 50 different states. It was ridiculous, right? And then he done it 100, and I just thought that 50, I watched the documentary and I went, I've never seen a human being do that. And then there's this guy doing 102, and I think the biggest lesson for this is that, like, as we develop more and more as human beings, the bar just keeps getting lifted. It's I call it the Roger Bannister theory. Roger Bannister was the first ever person to run the first ever sub 4 minute mile. And it was completely impossible. No one would ever be able to do it. And it was back in I can't even remember what it was. It was like 1940s, I'm going to say, right? It was a long time ago. And like, obviously sports science wasn't as good. Sports nutrition wasn't good. Training wouldn't have been as evolved. It would have been hard, but it wouldn't have been where it's at now. We're so educated now. And he done it. And to this day, I think it's something like 1,300 or 1,400 people have now done it. Now, that's still a small amount of people in the space of like 80 years. But it's still like a lot in the sense that for something that was, and for me, like my sort of, like I would say one of my life goals is I want to do something, I don't know what it is, that's so challenging that it raises a lot of eyebrows. In the same way that Russ Cook, that's running the entire length of Africa right now, Project Africa, if you haven't seen it, go and check him out. Russ Cook, hardest geezer. I can't remember the guy that's in the Ironman, but he's running the length of Africa. He's going to be running for like a year. A long time. Africa's like 14, like the way that they run is 14,000 kilometers.
That's insane.
They've been doing it for 2 months and he's at 3,000. It's so hard to even comprehend.
The distance he's running per day is incredible as well. It's like 50 kilometers a day.
Yeah.
I ran that in one day and then was burst for like 3 days after.
Yeah. Like it takes much, like it's insane. And like, to me, it's like we talked about, like the event isn't the hardest part, it's the prep, right? But now these events are going to a whole new level of, they're becoming prep events where it's like the challenge isn't the day. The challenge is covering the day times 100, 200. That it's unbelievable what these folk are doing now. And it's like, it really opens up a doorway to what people can do and what conditioning is. And do you know, it really goes back to that thing I was saying as well, Josh, of reassurance. Because someone else does it, it reassures you what you can do. And that's what the power of actually being around the right people, it reassures you of what you can do. And for me, that's like a big lifetime goal. I want to do something that's never been done. I don't know what that is. I don't know what it's going to look like, but that's my sort of big goal, is I want to do that. I don't know what that is, but like, it's very inspiring seeing these folk do things like that. Ross Edgley attempted the longest ever single distance swim for the second time and never completed it. That's inspiring. Second time. Do you know what I mean? When I was doing the Celtman and I thought, I'm not going to be able to do this, I was shiting myself. He's just like, right back to the drawing board, how we do this better. It's amazing. It's like, there's just levels to everything that you do. And it's like, you do something and you just realize the more you do, the more you know, the less you realize that you know.
Yeah.
You just know less and less and less. And I think if I look back, we were talking about last night's call, being on top of Mount Stupid, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Like, you become overly confident, overly arrogant. You think you know more than you do. And see, when you believe or think that you know more than you do, it's the beginning of the end. It is literally the beginning of the end. When you say comments like, I don't need any more help with this, or I know what I'm doing there, it's like, whoa, man, it's a red flag. That's a red flag right there. It might not be like there's imminent danger, but like, if you're even in that point where you believe that story you're telling yourself, it's like, where's the handbook on this? Like, can I see your completion signature on it, please? There's no completion to this stuff.
No.
It just keeps going. But see, when you believe that there's an end date to that, or that do you know what I mean? You're like, man, you're on top of Mount Stupid right now. I don't want to be. Everyone goes to Mount Stupid, do you know what I mean? Like, it's ego is a good thing and a bad thing. But like, when it's in a way, like when you're aware of it and you're like, right, it's probably a bit worrying that I'm a bit overly confident here and I've never done this before. That's like, you're aware of that. Like, you're very confident, but you're like, right, I'm quietly confident here. Whereas if you're arrogantly confident about something, it can be, that's you peaking at Mount Stupid, man. And then what happens is when you fall hard. Very, very hard. But all these folk, man, just show you like what resilience truly is. And a lot of folk think they're resilient now, they're just stubborn. Do you know what I mean? Very, very stubborn. And it's not resilience. Resilience is like just having a very, very like good mentality when it comes to failure, when it comes to maybe something's happened that's went wrong and you're like, right, this person said a really horrible comment to me, but where is the truth in this? Do you know what I mean? Like where is the part that I played in this that maybe they're 90% wrong, but where is the part that I said to trigger that point that they've said back? Like, what is the part in there? And then if you can get down to that and accept that and take ownership of that, you can become a lot more confident in what you do as well. And to me, that's what, like, it's awareness of your suffering, isn't it? That's what, like, resilience is. Like, whether that be something that you're doing personally, professionally, physically, it's like, I'm in that pain cave now. Right, what do I need to do right now? Who do I need to be? What do I need to act like? Whereas most folk go, and they get dropped in it. Like, and they just start being reactive and, do you know what I mean? Like, volatile, like they're fucking all over the place. And you're just like, no, just chill out, calm down a wee bit. Who do you need to be? What do you need to do? How do you need to get out of this? And I said it last night, it's like folk are dropped in a hole and they start digging rather than looking for a way out. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
What about you?
I'm not actually too sure at the minute. I think definitely Russ Cook is inspiring with what he's doing, running the length of Africa. I think having run the distance that he's doing each day, knowing the magnitude of that, knowing what it takes out of you, I can see how hard this is. Obviously, I've not done it multiple days in a row, and obviously he's going to be a lot more conditioned to it than I am. But it's definitely inspiring, like running 50k every day through that heat, through the desert, getting robbed at gunpoint, running with the police next to you to make sure you don't get killed pretty much or robbed. That's pretty inspiring. To actually go and do something that no one's ever done, that takes a lot of balls.
Yeah. And that's the point I was getting at earlier on, of like the bit I said at the very beginning was like, a lot of folk are very, very much so objecting, and it is important to understand the commitment you're taking to stuff. But like, no challenge, no change. You cannot change without some kind of growing pain. So if you're looking for the path of least resistance when it comes to being better, you're looking in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to find it there. You're going to find it in the uncomfortable conversations, the times when things don't go to plan, like Russ Cook, like this right now, getting robbed at gunpoint, like losing his passport, getting halted for like weeks. Did he plan on that happening? No. Did he accept that this was probably going to happen? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and a lot of folk are looking for this like path of least resistance, and they don't realise, like, I put up a really good result from one of our clients today, really good physical transformation. It's not just the physical transformation, but in that 16-week transformation, there was a 3-week point where he couldn't train because his appendix unexpectedly burst. He's dealt with it, got on with it, and done it, and he used it as an opportunity. Whereas for a lot of people, that would have been the time, like, right, it's not the right time right now. Need to park this, need to shelf this right now. I can't do this. Do it in a few months. And it's like, no, you can. It's not saying you need to go and do sit-ups, right? It's like, what can you do with your time right now? What areas are you deficient in? What areas are you lacking right now? What areas can you go and develop even more so? Cool, I'll do that. Because the mind controls the actions. And if your mind's not in a good spot, and if you let that negative situation, which it is, consume your actions, your future self is going to thank you for it. You're going to lose momentum. And that's where so many folk go wrong. They think that when that thing happens, is the line in the sand changes. They go back to the old one, don't they?
Yeah. The phrase life getting in the way springs to mind to me here, because I don't believe that's actually true, in the sense that we often think that life getting in the way is a bug, but it's actually a feature.
Yeah.
Like, it's written into the code of our existence.
Yeah. And
these things are bound to happen.
Yeah. And there's going to be certain things that are like, there's no lying about it. If someone is doing something where let's say for example, they're prepping for a photo shoot and they get told for the next 4 weeks they're going to be going to a different country where they work every 2 days. Is that going to be optimal? No. Could it still be done? Yes. Could they have done it better? Yes. But in that moment, you have to decide, who do you want to be right now? Who do you want to be in that situation? Do you want to be the person that goes, no, I want to do it next year when it's better? Or do you want to be the person that actually rewrites the programming and actually becomes way better in that situation? 100%, that's the person that I would be. Yeah, it might be suboptimal, but you're going to become a better person in the procedure of doing it as well.
And you're going to do it in spite of these obstacles and challenges that you face.
Yeah, a lot of folk just write things off, and life does get in the way sometimes. Like, let's imagine you've got 3 children, your partner works full time, you're full time parent for your children, and you look after your mum, and your mum gets sick, and yeah, you're probably not going to be able to do things at that time. But it's when folk like wear it like a trophy at that point, and it's like you just need to say, this is what it is, this is the card I've been dealt right now. Mm-hmm. Whereas folk go, this happened and this happened and this happened, that's why I'm there. And it's like, well, no, that happened, but you could have chose to play it this way. You could have still managed this. You still could have still done that. It's not to say is it good, bad, right or wrong what they done, but it's this like out, this ticket, like I'm out because this happened. It's like, yeah, like it doesn't change the circumstances, it doesn't change the situation, but the way in which you react, and this is something that like what's his name, Ben Bergenham talks about in Chasing Excellence. It's like the 5 things that you have control over are your mindset, your training, your sleep, your nutrition, your recovery. No one else. Like you can, how you choose to perceive a situation is down to those 5 things. And it's like, you can be reactive or you can be proactive. It's completely down to that. And most people, understandably, because they've not trained themselves to be more proactive, are reactive. And it's always an external factor as to why something can't be done. And that's like why we're on a mission right now, because we want to make personal responsibility cool again, because like, it just makes your life better and everything. Like, even when I still have arguments with Ailey, we still moan, we still bicker. We'll have a wee argument and I'll just stop myself, go like that. And I want to just give her a pure snide comment back. I want to just give her a wee stab in the kidneys and go, fuck you. But then I just sit and think to myself and go, if I do that, that's going to prolong this. That's going to make this longer. I might be wrong right now. And even if I don't admit it, it's going to make it longer. I just think about like, what's the cost of me doing this or not doing this thing? And to me, like the more personal responsibility you can take your life, you get microdoses of that and it gets better and better and better. If I look at myself even a few years ago versus where I'm at now and how I react to situations, it's so much better. You've seen the evolution of me with technology. I'm still crap with technology, but I'm not as reactive to it. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's still there. So it's like, it's so important. It's such an underrated thing, like personal responsibility in it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I've found that like taking responsibility for a lot of things definitely helped me and my growth. So when it comes to like fitness, just my overall being as well. Like I went through a time in uni where I didn't really know who I was, and I felt like I was trying to be someone else. And it got to a point where I had to go, right, I had to look in the mirror and say, what are you actually doing? Who are you? Just do the basics. Just be you. Don't be someone else. Be the best version of you can be, and just take responsibility for your actions. And I've done that.
Yeah. Do the thing, but do it better.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's my answer to a lot of things now. When people are like, by the way, like this isn't working, I think I need to do this, and I've got this holiday coming up, I think I need to drop this. I'm like, you just need to do the thing better.
Yeah.
That you're already meant to be doing. And when you do that, you get better.
Yeah, I noticed that. This is a total tangent here, but I always remember when I was younger and studying for my exams, I would like stop training during my exam time so I could study. And I was like, no, that's the exact opposite of what I should actually be doing. I should still be training so that I'm looking after my mental health while I'm studying.
Yeah. See, our minds, they've no changed from where we've been being pure primitive. We're still looking for the path of least resistance, and it's the safest way. But what is always the safest way perceived isn't the most effective way. It's the safest because our brains are like engineered to protect us. So when we think about like exams, we think about things like right time, energy. We think about things like stress. We think about things like how am I going to do that? And we base it on what our past experiences are of it. So it might be like when you crammed. So your experience of what studying maybe cramming. So then when you assume cramming, you think about no time, late nights. How am I going to get training in? But then it's like, no, training teaches you discipline. Training teaches you to turn up when you don't want to turn up. And what you start to find is that if you were to keep that thing in that you keep taking out every time you get to a challenging time, it actually trains you physically and psychologically to deal with these things so much better, so that you're better equipped, you've got better tools. It's almost like you've got a toolbox with you, and you're able to deal with these things and bat them off. And what you end up finding is that, like this conversation with a client recently when we were on a call, I said, it's funny that you've actually got busier, but you've actually got more time now. And they were like, I know. They've got busier, they're opening a facility, they've got more clients, they've got more things going on. But what they perceived when they came in to have less time, they've actually got more time now because they chose to show up for themselves. And it's like when you, like, it's such a powerful thing. And it's like what people's perception often of time is, or how little they have. It's not necessarily, it's how they're choosing to manage it and prioritize things. That's the biggest, when it comes to time, folk are like, I don't have the time for it, I've got this and that. It's like, right, what's your screen time on your phone? That's the biggest one you can always shock someone with. And they're like, oh, I've never looked, 6 hours. So if we got that down to 4 hours, just even 4, which is still quite a lot for someone that maybe doesn't need their phone, you have 14 hours additional a week of focus. And it's like, oh, so I do. I can actually like get more focus out of my day. And I know it's not as simple as that. I know that when it's not just a case every time you're on your phone, you're just sitting still, but like it's focus, and most folk lack focus to prioritize things because they're all over the place and they're jumping between things. So, obviously this is your first ever podcast. Before we kind of round things off, mate, because I think we can just keep going off in mad tangents. And that's what podcasts are all about. But have you got anything to say to the listeners? First ever podcast, anything you would like to say? Doesn't even need to be about the podcast. Anything you want to broadcast yourself before we close things off?
I was actually really nervous for this.
Yeah.
Because obviously first time, and I know that a lot of people watching this might be sitting on the fence or thinking of, should I get coaching? Should I get a coach? Should I do that or sign up for this event? My advice would be, yes, just do it, because in 10, 15, 20 years time, you're going to look back on your life and go, what if? The whole object, on one of the things I think is really important in life is to reduce those number of what ifs. And that's what my mission is at the minute, to reduce them. So if you, I'm looking down the camera, I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to look down the camera on a podcast, so it feels pretty cool. If you're sitting on the fence thinking about it and you want to not settle for average, do it.
Love it, mate.
Sign up for that event.
Put
yourself out there.
Do the thing, but do better.
Create content, whatever it may be. Go for it.
Love it, mate. But guys, hope you enjoyed this episode. Please share this to your stories, tag us, put it on your blog, put it anywhere, push it out there, because it's the only way this podcast is going to get out there. But guys, hope you enjoyed the episode. See you later. Goodbye.